That machine isn't getting on board.
You decide issue. Neither are you deciding that.
Sir, we need you to step aside, now. The gate agent's voice cut through the boarding hum as the enforcer in crimson leaned in, her smile tight, eyes bright with victory. Melissa Hartwell tapped her clipboard like a gavel. She'd already decided. My baby's medical device was suspicious, and she'd made sure everyone within earshot knew it. I didn't raise my voice. I just said the thing she didn't expect to hear. I helped design devices like that, and the airline already had my clearance. The crowd shifted. A few heads turned. Somewhere behind us, a boarding chime rang, cheerful and wrong. If you've ever felt that electric calm right before a bully overreaches, stay with me and hit subscribe now. I'm Ethan Caldwell. I'm a biomedical engineer, and the machine strapped to my son's stroller wasn't a gadget or a convenience. It was a lifeline. The clipboard queen didn't know that yet. She thought rules were weapons and titles were shields. She thought exhaustion made me small. The tyrant in heels waved her report again, confident, smug, already rehearsing the story she'd tell later about keeping the community safe. Her red jacket flashed under the terminal lights like a warning flare. She'd followed us from the HOA shuttle, past check-in, all the way here, inserting herself where she didn't belong. My son Noah slept through it, chest rising in careful rhythm. The oxygen concentrator hummed softly, a steady mechanical breath that kept panic at bay. I felt every vibration through my fingers. Rachel squeezed my arm, her eyes rimmed red, the kind of tired that settles into the bones. Missing this flight wasn't an inconvenience. It meant missing the specialist who'd been waiting for us for months. Where are you watching from? Because wherever you are, imagine someone pointing at your child and calling what keeps them alive a threat. The gate agent hesitated, caught between policy and pressure. Melissa seized the pause. The board chair leaned closer, lowering her voice as if that made it official. She claimed authority. She claimed concern. She claimed she was protecting everyone else. I let the pause stretch. Airports amplify everything. The scrape of shoes, the rustle of boarding passes, the whispering that starts when people sense a spectacle. A man, a few rows back, frowned. A woman clutched her purse tighter. Judgment spread faster than facts. I didn't explain the law. I didn't lecture. I touched the device, felt its warmth, and remembered the NICU alarms, the nights counting breaths, the promise I made when Noah finally came home. No system would stand between him and breathing. Not fear, not ego, not a clipboard. Melissa mistook my calm for surrender. She gestured toward security, already savoring the outcome. The enforcer in crimson thrived on scenes like this, where power felt public and unchallenged. The reversal was coming, not loud, not dramatic, just precise. Delta's policies weren't secrets. To me, ADA protections weren't favors, and airlines don't gamble with lives when the facts are clear. The gate agent's radio crackled. A supervisor was on the way. The tyrant in heels straightened, chin high, convinced this would end the way it always did, with her winning. I looked down at Noah and breathed with him. The hum steadied my pulse. The crowd leaned in. Melissa smiled. She had no idea she'd just pulled the wrong thread. The gate area felt smaller as time pressed in. Every delay tightened the knot in my chest. Every glance a reminder of how quickly a lie could harden into truth. I caught Rachel's breath hitch, felt her fingers dig in, and anchored myself there. This wasn't about winning an argument. It was about getting on that plane, intact, unseen, and refusing to let spectacle decide our fate. And as the supervisor approached, the air itself seemed to hold its breath too. The supervisor arrived with that practiced airport pace, fast enough to matter, slow enough to look in control. He stopped at the podium between me and the jet bridge and glanced from Noah's stroller to Melissa Hartwell's red blazer. The clipboard queen didn't wait. She stepped forward like she owned the gate, angling her report so the Delta logo on the counter could see it. "This passenger is transporting an unapproved device," she said, voice crisp, almost pleased. "I'm the HOA Safety Compliance Chair. I'm reporting a potential threat." The supervisor blinked once, then looked at me. "Sir, is that medical equipment?" "It is," I said. My throat felt dry, but my hands stayed steady on the stroller handle. "Portable oxygen concentrator, FAA compliant. We pre-notified." The enforcer in crimson scoffed, just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Of course he'd say that. Anyone can buy suspicious machinery online. Rachel exhaled hard, the sound halfway between disbelief and rage. I felt my jaw tighten. Melissa Hartwell had done this before, not with uniforms and radios, but with the same playbook. Pick a target, redefine them as a problem, then recruit authority to do the dirty work. Back in our neighborhood, Oak Palisade Estates, all manicured hedges and community standards, the tyrant in heels treated fear like a hobby. She'd cited an older man for leaving a walker by his front step. She'd threatened fines over an accessible ramp because it changed the look of the street. And she loved the HOA portal, posting violation photos like warnings to everyone else. I'd told myself it was petty bureaucracy, until Noah arrived early, tiny and fragile, and the world became a list of risks I couldn't ignore. The supervisor reached for my boarding pass. "What's the device model?" I rattled it off without thinking. Flow rate, certifications, battery capacity, labeling. The board chair's expression flickered, as if she'd expected stammering, not fluency. "You're making this sound rehearsed," Melissa said. "It's my job," I replied. "I consult on medical device compliance. I don't guess." The supervisor's radio crackled. He listened, nodded, and leaned closer to me. "We're going to verify. Please come with me to the service desk." Verify meant time. Time meant oxygen. Time meant a baby who didn't care about ego battles or neighborhood politics. My stomach turned cold. Melissa Hartwell followed immediately, heels clicking like punctuation. "I'll accompany," she said. "For safety." "For what?" Rachel snapped, then bit the words back. Her hand slid to Noah's blanket, checking his face, his color, his calm. She didn't need to say it. Don't let her delay us. We moved behind the podium into a narrow corridor lined with carts and cables. The lighting changed. Less flattering, more real. The tyrant in heels leaned toward the supervisor. "You should know," she said, not quite a whisper. "He's been defiant in our community. He ignores authority." Defiant was Melissa's favorite label. It meant anyone who didn't flinch when she threatened fines, anyone who asked for bylaws, anyone who remembered an HOA wasn't the law. At the service desk, the supervisor typed fast. "Mr. Caldwell, we do have a note here," he said. "Medical accommodation pre-cleared." Melissa froze. The clipboard queen's lips parted, then pressed into a line. She recovered quickly, turning her outrage toward me. "You went around the proper channels." "There aren't HOA channels at an airport," I said, voice low. "Just policy and people." The supervisor lifted a hand. "Ma'am, what's your relationship to this passenger?" The board chair hesitated. "I'm responsible for community safety. He didn't smile. Not here you aren't. Passengers clustered at the corridor mouth, pretending not to stare. The concentrator kept humming, like a metronome. Rachel's fingers trembled on the stroller strap. I tasted metal, that adrenaline, and forced my breathing slower. Behind us, a familiar voice drifted from the waiting area, uneasy and strained. Melissa, what are you doing? Melissa, what are you doing? The voice carried a familiar discomfort. A man stepped into the corridor mouth with a Delta boarding tag clipped to his jacket, eyes darting from the supervisor to Noah's stroller, to the red blazer he clearly wished he hadn't recognized. That was Brian Lopez, HOA secretary, frequent flyer. The guy who always volunteered to take minutes so he could avoid taking sides. Right now, his shoulders were hunched like he'd walked into a fight already in progress. Melissa Hartwell turned sharply, the enforcer in crimson offended that anyone would question her. Brian, she said, drawing his name out like a warning. This is an active safety situation. Brian's hands lifted, then dropped, unsure where to land. His fingers worried the strap of his carry-on. He didn't step closer, didn't step away. Just hovered, trapped between decency and the board chair's stare. The supervisor glanced at him. Sir, are you with this passenger? Brian swallowed. I'm from the same neighborhood, he admitted, eyes flicking to me like an apology he couldn't say. Rachel's gaze locked on him, sharp, exhausted, pleading, not for sympathy, for someone to stop this before the delay turned dangerous. The clipboard queen snapped back to the supervisor. He's biased. He's part of the same defiant group. Brian flinched at defiant. You could see the old pattern hit him. Keep your head down, stay on the board, don't become the next target. His foot tapped once, then froze. I kept my voice even. Brian, you were on the email chain when I told the board we had to travel with medical equipment. You knew why. His eyes met mine for half a second, then dropped to Noah. The concentrator hummed, steady and soft. Brian's throat bobbed as he tried to speak, then stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck, broadcasting conflict without a word. I didn't think she'd... he started, then his glance snapped to Melissa Hartwell. The tyrant in heels stared him down, daring him to finish. The supervisor's patience thinned. Ma'am, you're not authorized. You can't interfere with medical accommodations. Melissa lifted her chin. I'm not interfering. I'm reporting. That device could be fake. The accusation landed like a slap. A few passengers murmured. Someone's phone camera tilted up. Rage burned behind my ribs, but I kept my hands on the stroller. Control mattered. Oxygen mattered more. Brian's fingers tightened around his strap until his knuckles paled. He stared at the device label. Manufacturer, serial number, FAA statement. Like the truth was physically printed, and he was forcing himself to read it. He leaned in a fraction, then stopped, as if proximity meant commitment. His mouth opened, closed. He looked at Rachel again and winced, guilt finally visible. I've flown with these, he said quietly. My mom uses one. Delta clears it. You can't just call it suspicious because you don't like someone. Melissa snapped. Brian. That single word was a leash. He recoiled, shoulders tightening. His gaze slid to the supervisor, then to me, then to the waiting crowd. He was calculating consequences the way people do when they've been punished for truth before. The supervisor's radio chirped. He listened, face shifting from neutral to serious. Mr. Caldwell, our ADA compliance desk wants to speak with you directly. We're moving this to a private assistant's office. Melissa Hartwell stepped forward fast. Absolutely not. I need to be present. The supervisor didn't budge. No, ma'am, you don't. He gestured down the hall. I started pushing Noah's stroller toward a door marked Assistance. Rachel stayed close, one hand on the frame, one hand over Noah's blanket. Brian hesitated, then took one step after us, his face tight as if he'd just chosen a side without meaning to. Behind us, the enforcer in crimson stood rigid, lips pressed thin, watching Brian follow, realizing for the first time her board wasn't unanimous anymore. I pushed Noah's stroller through the assistant's door, and the gate noise fell away. Cooler air, a faint scent of disinfectant, a small desk, 2 chairs, and a poster about accessibility rights. Rachel exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for miles. The supervisor tried to close the door. Melissa Hartwell caught it with her heel. "I'm not being excluded," the enforcer in crimson said, sliding inside. "This is a security matter." "Ma'am, you were told to remain outside," the supervisor said. The clipboard queen raised her highlighted report. "I have a duty. If he's carrying suspicious equipment onto a plane, I'll answer for it." Brian hovered in the doorway, half in, half out, eyes flicking between her red blazer and Noah's stroller. I rolled the stroller near an outlet. The concentrator hummed softly, steady as a heartbeat. I checked the battery and tubing. Rachel's hand stayed on Noah's blanket, protective and trembling. "Mr. Caldwell," the supervisor said, "we're calling our ADA accommodations desk to confirm everything. We have to follow process when a report is filed." Melissa scoffed. "Exactly, process," which he's always trying to dodge. That wasn't for the supervisor. It was for Brian, for any invisible audience she imagined. Neighbors who applauded her standards. I kept my voice low. "You filed a report at the gate about my infant's medical device." "She filed a safety concern," the supervisor corrected, though his eyes said he was tired of her. Melissa leaned closer. "When we get back, I'll fine you for misuse of common areas. The HOA shuttle is an amenity. You used it to transport restricted equipment." Rachel snapped. "Restricted? It's for our baby." The board chair shrugged. "Not my problem. You should have thought of that before acting like rules don't apply." Brian's mouth opened, closed. His fingers tightened around his carry-on strap. He looked like he wanted to speak, and like he was scared of what it would cost. I didn't bite. "You don't have authority over airline accommodations, Melissa." "Maybe not," the clipboard queen said, smiling thin. "But I have authority over your home." There it was, not safety, control, property, the threat that followed you long after a flight ended. The desk phone rang. The supervisor answered, listened, then nodded. "Yes, infant passenger, device present." Melissa stepped toward him. "Put me on speaker." "No," he said, flat. The enforcer in crimson flared. She pulled out her own phone. "Fine, I'll call my contact at TSA. If Delta ignores a risk, I'll make sure. Federal eyes are on this." My pulse jumped. A lie didn't have to be true to be harmful. It just had to slow you down. Brian finally stepped fully into the room. His hand shook. "Melissa, stop," he said. "That's not how this works." Her gaze snapped to him. "Excuse me?" "You can't escalate like that," he said, eyes dropping to Noah, then lifting again. "You're going to hurt them." The tyrant in heels laughed once, sharp. "So now you're taking his side?" The supervisor held the receiver toward me. "Mr. Caldwell, ADA compliance is on the line. They need to verify a few details." I took the phone. "This is Ethan Caldwell." A calm woman spoke on the other end, professional and kind. As I answered, model, prescription letter, battery status, I watched Melissa Hartwell's expression shift. Confusion, irritation, then the first flicker of worry. She tried one last play. The clipboard queen lifted her phone and aimed it at Rachel and the stroller. "I'm recording," she announced. "For the community." Rachel went pale. My grip tightened on the receiver, and in that instant, I understood Melissa's goal wasn't stopping a flight. It was making sure we never felt safe at home again. The supervisor told her to lower the phone and step out. Melissa didn't. She smiled at me like she'd won for a beat, while the woman on the line went silent. The silence on the line lasted just long enough to feel dangerous. In the assistance room, Noah's concentrator suddenly sounded louder, like it was breathing for all of us. Melissa Hartwell kept her phone raised, recording Rachel's face, the stroller, my hands on the receiver, collecting proof for whatever story she planned to tell. "Ma'am," the Delta supervisor said, "lower the phone." The clipboard queen didn't. "I'm documenting misconduct," she replied, sweet as poison. "If something happens, the community will know who to blame." On the call, the ADA compliance supervisor spoke again, slower now. "Mr. Caldwell, is there a non-airline individual filming and interfering with your medical accommodation?" "Yes," I said. "She followed us from our neighborhood. She filed a report at the gate. Now she's recording my wife and infant." Brian hovered near the door, shoulders tight, eyes fixed on Melissa's screen like he wanted to knock it away and couldn't move. "Thank you," the ADA supervisor said. "Your child's oxygen concentrator is permitted and pre-cleared. A third party cannot override that. If someone obstructs or harasses you during a protected accommodation, we treat it as an incident." Melissa's smile twitched. The tyrant in heels hadn't expected the word incident. "What does that mean?" I asked, keeping my voice even while my pulse hammered. "It means we document interference," she said. "We can involve airport authorities if needed. I'm contacting the gate operations manager. Do not surrender the device. Are you being delayed?" "Yes," Rachel said, the word breaking at the end. The Delta supervisor in the room heard it. His posture changed. Less customer service, more protection. Melissa leaned toward the receiver as if closeness gave her authority. "This is absurd," the board chair snapped. "I'm preventing a security breach." The voice on the line cut through her. "Sir," she said to me, "is that the person interfering?" "Yes." "Ma'am," the ADA supervisor said, sharper, "you are not authorized to participate. If you continue, you may be removed from the secure area." The enforcer in crimson went rigid. She looked to the Delta supervisor, then to Brian, hunting for backup. "I want her out," Rachel whispered, and I felt the fear under it. Not drama, not anger, fear. The Delta supervisor stepped closer. "Phone down, now." Melissa lowered it a few inches but didn't stop recording, thumb hovering like a trigger. "You can't silence me," she said. "I pay dues. I'm responsible." Brian's hands shook on his carry-on strap. He swallowed hard, then finally spoke. "Melissa, you're hurting them." She cut her eyes at him. "Stay out of it, Brian." He flinched, but he didn't retreat. His gaze dropped to Noah, then lifted again, like the baby gave him permission to be brave. The ADA supervisor continued, controlled. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm noting that the reporter is recording your family and using non-airline authority claims to intimidate. That matters to us." And that's when my professional brain clicked on, clean and cold. Delta wasn't an HOA meeting. They didn't care about her titles. They cared about compliance, liability, and passenger safety. Melissa Hartwell had walked into a system that keeps receipts. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Two things," she said. "Keep the device running and give me her name." I looked straight at the clipboard queen. "Melissa Hartwell," I said into the receiver. "HOA Vice President, red blazer, recording us." Her face drained slightly, like she'd realized her name wasn't a weapon here, it was a handle. The Delta supervisor opened the door. "We're relocating," he said. "Gate operations office, now." My stomach nodded, but I didn't slow. We rolled into the service corridor, wheels rattling over uneven tile. Behind us, Melissa's heels followed, faster, angrier. She wasn't leaving, not yet, but now she was chasing us into Delta's territory, and Delta had just started a file with her name on it. Melissa Hartwell's heels kept clicking behind us, a metronome of entitlement in a hallway that wasn't hers. The Delta supervisor walked ahead with quick, clipped steps, guiding us through a badge-only door into the gate operations office. The moment we crossed the threshold, the air changed. Less public, more procedural, like we'd stepped into the backbone of the airport. Monitors showed live camera feeds, jet bridges, podiums, boarding lanes. Phones rang. A printer spat paper. I parked Noah's stroller beside a chair and watched Rachel's shoulders drop an inch, as if the door itself offered cover. The supervisor motioned to a desk phone. "ADA compliance is staying on the line," he said. "Operations manager is on the way." The clipboard queen tried to follow. The enforcer in crimson planted a hand on the door frame, voice sharp. "I'm part of this. I reported a threat." The Delta supervisor didn't argue. "Ma'am, you're not cleared for this office." Her eyes widened. The tyrant in heels scanned the room for someone to intimidate and found uniforms, key cards, and people who didn't flinch. She pushed anyway, shoulder first, like force could replace permission. A man with a gate operations manager tag stepped into her path. He didn't raise his voice. "You need to wait outside," Melissa scoffed. "I pay dues. I'm an official." "Not here," he said, and held the door open with 2 fingers, calm as a lock. For a second, she stood there, red blazer blazing, deciding whether to escalate. Brian hovered in the hallway, face tight, hands clenched around his bag strap. He looked like he wanted to vanish, and also like he couldn't. When Melissa turned her glare on him, he dropped his eyes, then forced them back up. Rachel brushed Noah's cheek. He didn't stir. The concentrator hummed on, steady, but my mind kept circling the same fear. We were still not on the plane. The ADA compliance supervisor's voice came through the speaker, firm and clear. "Mr. Caldwell, we're documenting this as interference with a protected accommodation. Operations is reviewing the report and camera footage. If she continues, airport security will remove her." Camera footage. That was the lever I needed. No searching, no guessing, just the airport's own eyes. "Can you see the gate feed?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "Yes," the operations manager said. "We can." I nodded toward the monitor wall. "Then you can see she followed us. She wasn't staff. She inserted herself, filmed my wife, and tried to delay us." The manager's gaze shifted to the screens. His jaw tightened. "I'm pulling it up." Behind the glass, the board chair pressed closer, phone still in her hand, recording through the window like it meant anything. When the manager looked her way, she straightened, suddenly aware she looked less like a protector and more like a problem. The ADA supervisor continued. "Mr. Caldwell, do you consent to a Delta liaison escorting you to boarding once cleared?" "Yes," I said immediately. "Please." That was my line in the sand. No more hoping she'd get bored. No more being the reasonable neighbor. Melissa Hartwell had proven she'd weaponize any opening, anywhere, even against a baby. Rachel squeezed my hand, cold fingers digging in. "We can't miss this," she whispered. "I know," I said, and looked at Noah. The hum of the device steadied me. The monitors flickered. The operations manager's fingers moved fast across a keyboard, pulling up footage that would speak louder than any HOA accusation. On the other side of the glass, the clipboard queen's smile finally cracked. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, but the shape of it was pure outrage. For a heartbeat, I believed the system would protect us, then remembered systems only work when you demand it. The door locked with a soft click. For the first time today, Melissa was outside, and we were inside. The door stayed shut behind the glass, and Melissa Hartwell pressed close to it like she could stare it open. Inside, the operations manager rewound the gate footage with the calm of someone who'd seen every kind of entitled meltdown. Rachel bent over Noah's stroller, checking his color, listening to the concentrator's steady hum like it was a promise. "We're escorting you to a quieter employee area while we finish review," the manager said. "You'll board once we clear it." A Delta liaison guided us through a side door into a staff corridor lined with vending machines and a poster about passenger dignity. Fluorescent light flattened everything: my fatigue, Rachel's fear, the tightness in my jaw. The hallway smelled like stale coffee and sanitizer. Somewhere beyond the wall, boarding announcements chirped like nothing was wrong. Melissa's heels clicked outside the restricted door, pacing. The enforcer in crimson couldn't get in, but she could linger, loud enough to keep the pressure on. Every time her voice rose, Rachel's shoulders tensed. At the far end of the corridor, Brian Lopez appeared, hovering near a corner like he wasn't sure he had the right to be here. His eyes bounced from the door to Noah to me. His hands kept opening and closing around his carry-on strap. "Ethan," he said, voice thin, "I'm sorry." I watched his posture, hunched, defensive, guilty. This was the HOA secretary who always acted neutral, always wrote minutes like he could hide behind them. Now he looked like a man standing on a ledge. "Do you know what she's doing?" Rachel asked. The anger in her words was edged with panic. Brian swallowed. "She planned to cause a delay," he said. "Not the exact gate drama, but she talked about handling it because you used the HOA shuttle." My stomach tightened. "Tell me." He pulled out his phone, thumb shaking. "Last night, Melissa Hartwell wrote in the board group chat," he said. "She said if you kept acting special, she'd flag the device at the airport. She claimed she had a security contact." The sentence landed like a cold hand around my throat. This wasn't concern. It was strategy. "Show me," I said. Brian angled the screen toward me. Her name, her message, smug punctuation, no direct threats, just bureaucratic violence, the kind that hides inside paperwork and delays and shrugs. Under it, Brian's reply sat there like a whisper. "Please don't. It's medical equipment." She'd responded, "Stop being soft. Strong leadership." Rachel stared at the phone, then at Noah. "She did this on purpose," she said, more to herself than to us. Brian's eyes glassed over. He blinked hard, fighting it. "She's done it before," he admitted. "Not with airlines, with neighbors. Suspicious activity reports when she's mad. A veteran. A woman with a service dog. She tells herself it's safety." I felt something in me go still and sharp. Delta didn't need my opinion. Delta needed facts Intent, pattern, a timeline. Forward that chat to me, I said, and you're going to tell Delta what you just told us. Brian froze. You could see the calculation. HOA retaliation, board backlash, Melissa's fury. His shoulders rose like armor, then slowly dropped. I will, he said, and the words sounded like they cost him. A notification pinged as Brian forwarded the screenshots, first to me, then to the Delta liaison's email. Her expression tightened when she read Melissa's name, and the phrase, "flag the device." "Stay here," she said. "Operations is escalating this to the station manager." My phone clock glared. Boarding was closing soon. The thought hit like vertigo. One more delay, and we'd still miss the flight anyway. Down the corridor, Melissa's voice rose again, muffled but furious. The clipboard queen was still trying to force the story into her shape. But now we had her own words, and a witness who'd finally stopped flinching. The corridor felt tighter after Brian's confession. The Delta liaison returned with a keycard and a look that said this had crossed a line. "Station manager wants you in her office," she said. "Now." We rode a service elevator that smelled of hot metal and jet fuel, then stepped into a quiet administrative suite behind the terminal. A plaque read "Station Management." Through a glass wall, I could see the ramp below, ground crews moving like clockwork while my world stayed stuck on one humming machine. A woman in a navy blazer stood as we entered. "Mr. Caldwell, Mrs. Caldwell," she said. "I'm Angela Price, station manager. ADA compliance looped me in." Rachel didn't sit at first. Her hand stayed on Noah's stroller handle, knuckles pale. The concentrator hummed steadily, and Angela's eyes flicked to it with recognition, not suspicion. "You're cleared to travel with the device," Angela said. That was never in question. What is in question is why a non-airline individual inserted herself into our process. On speaker, the ADA compliance supervisor confirmed it. "We have the accommodation on file. We also have reports of harassment and filming." I slid my phone across the desk and opened Brian's screenshots. "Melissa Hartwell," I said, voice level. "HOA vice president. She planned this last night. She said she'd flag the device." Angela's jaw tightened. "Intent," she murmured, writing it down. The word carried weight. Intent meant this wasn't confusion. It was a move. Rachel finally sat, shoulders rigid. "She followed us from the HOA shuttle," she said. "Cornered us at check-in, tried to keep us from boarding, then filmed our baby." Angela nodded once. "We have cameras," she said. "We're pulling the full sequence: shuttle area, ticketing, gate, restricted corridor." "If you document the whole chain, it shows escalation," I said. "And it shows she wasn't staff." "That's exactly what we're doing," Angela replied. The operations manager stepped in with a tablet. "We've got her on video at the gate and outside the restricted office," he said. "She's still out there arguing with an agent." I pictured the enforcer in crimson in that red blazer, phone in hand, feeding on attention. She only knew how to push. Angela tapped her pen. "We'll escort your family to the jet bridge," she said. "A supervisor will walk with you. Security will handle the other person." Rachel's breath hitched. "Will she be removed?" "If she refuses to comply, yes," Angela said. "We're also filing an internal incident report. Name, footage, witness statement, interference with a protected accommodation." "There's one more piece," I said. "She threatened HOA retaliation, said she has authority over our home." Angela's expression hardened. "That's outside our domain," she said, "but intimidation is noted. If she made false authority claims inside the airport, we can refer it." The ADA supervisor's voice came through the speaker, firm as a stamp. Mr. Caldwell, we can provide a written confirmation of the accommodation and an interference report number. That documentation can help if harassment continues. A report number meant a trail the tyrant in heels couldn't vote down. Brian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked up, pale. "She's texting the board," he said. "She's saying Ethan threatened airline staff and that she's protecting the community." Angela held out her hand. "Forward it, now." Brian sent it, fingers trembling. The lie was forming in real time, and Delta was watching it happen today. Angela stood. "We're moving," she said. "Keep the device running. Stay beside the stroller. And if you see Melissa Hartwell, the board chair, the clipboard queen, the tyrant in heels, don't engage. Let us handle it." I rose with the stroller, heart thudding. Through the glass wall, the concourse looked bright and ordinary. Somewhere out there, the enforcer in crimson was still convinced she could win. She didn't know she'd walked into the part of the system that doesn't argue. We left station management through a back corridor that opened near the jet bridge, away from the main boarding lane. Angela Price walked beside us with a clipped calm, and the Delta liaison stayed a step ahead, key card ready. The airport felt louder again, rolling bags, overlapping announcements, the metallic squeal of a cart turning too fast. Yet inside me, everything narrowed to one goal: get Noah onto that plane. Rachel kept her palm on the stroller frame like she could hold the world steady by force. The concentrator's hum never changed, but I felt every vibration as if it was counting down. At the corner, the operations manager paused and pointed at a wall-mounted camera. "This feed covers the gate podium," he said. "We're recording the final interaction." Angela nodded. "Good, keep it clean." Clean meant no shouting, no pushing, no messiness the clipboard queen could twist into her story. As we approached the gate, I saw her immediately. Melissa Hartwell stood near the boarding lane rope, red blazer bright against the gray terminal, phone held chest high as if filming were a badge. The enforcer in crimson was talking fast at a gate agent, jaw tight, eyes sharp. A small cluster of passengers had formed the way people do when they sense drama, pretending they're not watching while their bodies lean in. The tyrant in heels spotted me and smiled like she'd been waiting. She lifted her phone higher. Angela stepped forward first. "Ma'am," she said, voice even, "you need to stop recording and step back from the boarding area." Melissa's smile widened. "I'm documenting," the board chair said. "He's the problem. He's manipulating your staff with a fake device." The gate agent looked relieved to see Angela. The gate agent's shoulders had that tight, trapped posture of someone caught in someone else's chaos. Angela didn't glance at me. She kept her eyes on Melissa Hartwell. "That passenger has a verified accommodation," she said. "You have no standing here. If you continue interfering, airport security will remove you." Melissa scoffed, loud enough for the bystanders. "So you're siding with him? Typical. You let anything onto a plane these days." The words were designed for an audience, not for truth. She wanted the crowd to feed her. Rachel stiffened. I felt her hand shake on the stroller. I didn't look at Melissa. I watched Noah, watched his small chest rise, watched the machine doing its quiet work. I refused to give the clipboard queen the emotional reaction she wanted. Brian appeared at the edge of the crowd, face pale, eyes pinned on Melissa's phone. He didn't step in, not yet, but he was there, and that mattered. Witnesses change outcomes. A uniformed airport security officer approached, summoned by Angela's call. The officer's presence drew more eyes. Melissa's posture straightened, chin high, as if authority admired arrogance. "Ma'am," the officer said, "you need to move away from the boarding area." Melissa turned her phone toward the officer. "He's carrying suspicious machinery," the tyrant in heels said. "I'm reporting it." The officer's gaze flicked to the stroller, then to Angela. "Is the passenger cleared?" "Yes," Angela said, "and she's been obstructing and filming." Melissa's mouth opened, then closed. The enforcer in crimson recalculated. She tried a softer tone, the fake, reasonable one. "I'm just concerned. I represent our community." The officer didn't care. "Step back," he repeated. "Now." For the first time, Melissa Hartwell looked uncertain. Not afraid, she didn't do afraid, but startled that her title didn't work here. Her phone lowered an inch. Angela leaned slightly toward me. "Boarding is open," she said. "We're walking you down the jet bridge." I pushed the stroller forward. The crowd parted like water. Rachel stayed close, breath shallow, eyes wet. Behind us, the officer held his position, and the clipboard queen's voice rose again, sharp and furious. But it sounded distant now, like a storm behind glass. We were moving. We were almost through. And Melissa Hartwell was watching her control slip away in public, one step at a time. The jet bridge swallowed the terminal noise behind us, replacing it with the hollow roar of ventilation and the dull thud of our footsteps on ribbed metal. The air smelled like rubber and warm electronics. I pushed Noah's stroller carefully, watching the concentrator's battery light like it was the only star worth following. Rachel walked beside me, shoulders still tight, but her breathing finally began to slow. Angela stayed behind us with the gate agent, keeping the lane sealed, keeping the scene contained. The last thing we needed was Melissa Hartwell slipping through in a burst of entitlement. Halfway down the ramp, a Delta flight attendant stepped forward, eyes gentle, posture steady. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell?" she asked. "I'm here to help you settle and ensure the medical device is secure." I nodded, grateful and furious at the same time. Grateful for competence, furious that competence had been delayed by the enforcer in crimson playing hero with a clipboard. Inside the aircraft doorway, the cabin felt dimmer, calmer. A few passengers glanced up, curious, then looked away when they saw the baby. Some softened, some stayed wary. Airports teach people to judge fast. The attendant guided us to bulkhead seating where there was a little extra space. I parked the stroller, checked the tubing, ensured the concentrator's vents weren't blocked. Every motion felt deliberate, like ritual. Rachel sat first, then reached for Noah's blanket with trembling fingers. "We're on," she whispered, as if saying it too loudly could undo it. I exhaled, long and controlled, and for a moment the rage loosened. Then my phone vibrated. A text from Brian. "She's still at the gate, telling people you threatened staff. She's saying she'll handle you back, home." My stomach turned again. Getting on the plane wasn't the end. Melissa Hartwell wasn't the kind of tyrant in heels who lost gracefully. She'd turned this into a neighborhood spectacle the moment we landed. I looked toward the open aircraft door. The jet bridge was still attached. Boarding was still ongoing. Outside, gate noise drifted in, muffled announcements, the clatter of bags. Somewhere beyond that, the clipboard queen was still trying to rewrite reality. The flight attendant noticed my expression. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "We are," I said, then corrected myself. "We will be." A man in a suit appeared at the aircraft doorway with a small folder. He introduced himself quietly as a Delta customer care supervisor assigned by station management. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, "Angela asked me to personally deliver an incident reference number and a written confirmation of your medical accommodation." He handed me a single-page document with a case number and the words I'd been waiting for: verified, permitted, protected. It wasn't comfort, it was leverage. "If you experience continued interference," he added, "ADA compliance can provide additional documentation, and if the individual returns to the gate area, security will address it." Behind him, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom with a welcome message. It sounded normal, almost absurdly normal, like the world hadn't just tried to swallow us. Then, from the jet bridge, a familiar sharp voice pierced the calm. Melissa Hartwell, the board chair. She was arguing again, louder now, desperate to keep the stage. The Delta supervisor's posture stiffened. He stepped back toward the door, spoke to someone out of sight. A moment later, the flight attendant gently pulled the cabin divider closer, narrowing our view of the entryway. Rachel's eyes filled. She wiped them fast, angry at herself for showing anything. "What if she gets on?" she whispered. "She won't," I said, though my heart didn't fully believe it yet. I watched the attendant secure the cabin door area. The hum of Noah's device stayed steady. The paper in my hand felt thin, but it carried weight Melissa couldn't fake. Outside, the tyrant in heels kept pushing. Inside, the plane prepared to leave without her. And I realized the real fight was shifting now, from getting airborne to making sure Melissa Hartwell never did this to another family again. Melissa Hartwell's voice kept cutting through the divider. Even with the cabin door open, it felt like her rage had found a way inside. The Delta customer care supervisor leaned toward me. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm going to stop this at the source," he said. "If you're comfortable, stay seated." I didn't. Not because I wanted a fight, but because I wanted witnesses. I stepped into the doorway space. The jet bridge was attached, and the gate area beyond it was crowded. Late boarders, families clustering, a few passengers hovering with phones raised. At the mouth of the jet bridge, the board chair in the red blazer was planted like a barricade. Melissa Hartwell jabbed her clipboard toward the gate podium. "You can't let them fly," the enforcer in crimson insisted. "I reported a threat. If anything happens, it's on you." The gate agent's face was tight, trained to stay polite while being cornered. Angela Price stood beside her, posture firm. Airport security held position a few feet away, watching the tyrant in heels like patience with a timer. Angela didn't raise her voice. "Ma'am, you have been told. The passenger is cleared. Your report was reviewed and closed." Melissa's smile twitched. "Closed by who? By him?" She pointed down the jet bridge toward the aircraft doorway, toward me, loud enough for the crowd to follow her finger. Heads turned, eyes landed on the stroller area behind the divider. A woman gasped when she saw the baby. Another passenger muttered, "Seriously?" Rachel's hand found mine from behind, squeezing hard. I kept my face neutral, but my chest burned. This was what the clipboard queen wanted: public pressure, public shame, a story she controlled. Brian Lopez stood at the edge of the gathering, pale under the lights. He looked like he'd been pulled here by conscience and fear. His gaze kept dropping to the floor, then lifting to Melissa, then to me, like each look cost him. The security officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, you need to leave the boarding area." Melissa snapped her phone up. "I'm recording for the community." He threatened staff. "He's smuggling equipment." Angela's eyes narrowed. That's a false statement, she said. Stop. A ripple moved through the crowd. Phones came up. A silver-haired woman leaned to her companion and whispered, "That's a baby." The Delta supervisor at my side spoke calmly, but his tone had steel. "Ma'am, you're interfering with a protected medical accommodation. This is your final warning." The enforcer in crimson laughed, sharp and performative. "Protected? I'm an HOA official. I know policy." The security officer held out his hand. "Step back, now." Melissa Hartwell hesitated, eyes darting, calculating the audience. Then she turned to the crowd, voice suddenly sweet. "I'm just trying to keep everyone safe," the board chair said. "Wouldn't you want someone to speak up?" No one stepped forward. The silence answered her. Brian took a half step toward her, then forced himself to keep going. His hand shook. He looked at Rachel, then at Noah, then back at Melissa. "You planned this," he said, voice cracking. "You said you'd flag the device." Melissa whipped toward him. "Brian, shut up." He flinched, but he didn't retreat. "You texted it," he said. "Last night. You called it handling them." The crowd leaned in. Angela's gaze snapped to Brian. "Sir, are you willing to provide that statement?" Brian swallowed hard, eyes wet. "Yes," he said. "I already sent the screenshots." Melissa's face tightened, then flushed. The tyrant in heels looked around for an escape and found none. The security officer touched her elbow. "You're done here," she jerked away. "Don't touch me." That did it. The officer's posture hardened. "You are being removed from the secure area." As Melissa Hartwell was guided back, she kept talking, voice rising, trying to salvage control. But the crowd wasn't watching me anymore. They were watching her lose it. As Melissa Hartwell was guided back, she kept talking, voice climbing higher, trying to drag the crowd into her version of reality. The security officer didn't argue. He just kept walking, hand steady at her elbow, escorting the enforcer in crimson away from the boarding lane. Angela stood like a locked door, blocking the jet bridge until the tyrant in heels disappeared around the concourse corner. The moment she was gone, the gate area exhaled. Phones lowered. Late boarders shuffled forward, suddenly embarrassed to be part of it. Angela met my eyes once, a small nod that said, "It's handled." Then she turned to the agent. "Close the door," she said, and the words landed like mercy. I stepped back into the cabin. The divider slid shut. The flight attendant's hands moved, latching compartments, checking seatbelts, scanning faces. The normal routine felt surreal after the chaos, like the world insisting it hadn't just tested us. Rachel pulled Noah closer, her shoulders still tight. The portable oxygen concentrator hummed beside the bulkhead, steady. I watched the battery light, then watched my son's chest rise and fall. For the first time all day, my hands stopped shaking. The Delta customer care supervisor crouched beside my seat, folder tucked under his arm. "Mr. Caldwell," he said quietly. "Security removed the individual from the secure area. A station incident report was filed. ADA compliance has your case number, and we documented third-party interference and false statements." "Will she be allowed back to the gate?" I asked. "She won't," he said. "And if she tries to approach you again on airport property, we have footage and a report. You did the right thing by not engaging." Not engaging had cost me pride, but it saved my family. Melissa Hartwell fed on reactions. Delta fed on facts. My phone vibrated. A message from Brian Lopez. "I'm sorry, I'm done covering for her. When you land, I'll put my name to what I saw and what she wrote." I stared at the screen until the words stopped blurring. Brian wasn't a hero, but he'd crossed the line that mattered. He'd chosen truth over the board chair's approval, and he'd done it where consequences were real. The cabin lights dimmed. The captain announced we were pushing back. The plane shuddered, then began to roll. Outside the window, the terminal slipped away, and, with it, the place where the clipboard queen had tried to trap us. Rachel's breath loosened into something close to relief. "We're leaving," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, and felt the weight of it settle. We weren't just leaving an airport. We were leaving a story Melissa had tried to write about us, about who deserved compassion and who didn't. I looked down at Noah and thought about Oak Palisade Estates, about neighbors who'd watched Melissa Hartwell bully anyone who seemed vulnerable. An older man with a walker, a woman with a service dog. Families who stayed quiet because the tyrant in heels made quiet feel safer than fighting. Today proved something different. Power doesn't belong to the loudest person with a clipboard. It belongs to the systems that document, the witnesses who speak, and the parents who refuse to surrender. When we leveled off, the flight attendant returned with a cup of water and a smile. "He's doing great," she said, glancing at the device. No suspicion, no spectacle, just care. I tucked the incident reference into my bag like a shield I hoped never to use again, and I promised myself this wouldn't end at the gate. Melissa Hartwell had shown the community what she was. Now the community would get to decide what to do with that truth. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.